Johnson, and I'm excited today about my first episode of Conversations with RJ. I would like to welcome my first guest, Carl Brister.
Hey man, thank you for having me.
Man, it's a pleasure of having you here, man.
Yes, sir.
Let me give you a history of Carl Brister. My guest today is a recording artist, born and raised in the city of Plainfield, New Jersey, has appeared on BET and VH1 and other networks. As a survivor of a tragic incident of sexual abuse at the age of 5 years old, Carl Brister also uses his voice to uplift others. A spokesperson of New Jersey's Child Assault Prevention Organization, his acclaimed single, I'm Still Here, addresses the issues of sexual abuse and how he has turned tragedy to triumph. A father of two, married to his college sweetheart. Welcome, Carl.
Thank you, man. Thank you. And in honor of being your first guest,
Okay,
right? Because
okay.
I'm excited about that.
All right.
I have for you a gift.
Oh, man. Oh, man.
This is the
Oh,
latest-
see, Carl Brister, love plus life.
Yes, sir.
All right, love this. Okay, okay.
And it features the song that you mentioned, I'm Still Here. as
I'm
well.
still here. Man, I am excited. Thank you so very much. Oh, this
Yeah,
is great. It's a
you
great
know,
picture too, man.
Congratulations to you, man. I'm just really happy for you.
Okay, man. I really appreciate this. And the reason of me having this show, and our subject matter today is male survivors of sexual abuse. And my heart went out to so many of the people that I had contact with that experienced sexual abuse as a child. And I just had a heart for this. So that's why this show was developed. So I'm going to go on and ask a couple of questions so we can enlighten others and let other people know that might be experiencing the same issues, that they're not alone and that there's hope. The whole premise of this show is to encourage, to empower, and to enlighten other men. Okay, so let's just have a conversation. This is Conversation with RJ.
All right.
So you've been through a really tough time in your life, and I would like you to walk me through that journey. I want you to tell me your story.
Okay. So my story, as it relates to this, began at the age of 5.
Okay.
I was invited to play a game with a trusted family friend.
Right.
And this friend was entrusted to watch me without any other adult supervision. And this game turned out not to be a game.
Wow.
It was deception at the highest. And at the age of 5, I remember the pain. I remember the violation. I remember the tears.
Wow.
I remember being told not to make a sound. I remember being threatened never to tell anyone. After the experience, the memories of it were repressed.
Okay.
And I never had any clear recall while growing up. So thank God that allowed me to have what you would say a normal childhood. I never saw that person again until I was a teenager. And even then it was foggy. But one night in college, it was very still, I recall. Everything came back to my mind.
Okay.
Every detail, every emotion, everything came back to my mind except the person's face.
Wow.
I know the name. I saw exactly where it happened, but the face, even to this day, is blurred.
Wow.
For years, I dealt with it silently. It was in my college dorm. I didn't feel like I could share. I just honestly wept silently to myself.
Right.
I never told my family. I never told my girlfriends. I never told my friends. It took years to work through it. I
Okay.
remember being angry. I remember wanting revenge. I remember hating. I remember feeling ashamed. I remember feeling like as a 5-year old I should have fought more and not giving myself the not even I was seeing it through the eyes of a grown man.
Wow.
I it took years for me to see that I was a young child,
Right.
and there was really nothing that I could do. Um, so for years I hid that pain, um, but now I'm at a place where I understand that sharing my story will help others to share their
Right.
story.
Exactly.
Sharing my healing, how I work through it, will help others to begin
Right.
and complete their journey. And I know now that I'm still here.
Amen. I like that you're still here. I'd like to ask you a couple of questions. Did you ever ask yourself, did I deserve this, or why did this happen to me? Was I targeted? Was there something about my makeup, the way that you carried yourself, that maybe allowed your perpetrator to target you?
I felt I didn't do the why me part. I did the why did you allow this to happen to me, God?
God. Okay.
I was very angry with God,
Okay.
very angry for a very short moment, very angry with everyone
Right.
around me.
Exactly.
But I knew really quickly that my parents and other adults, they were never at fault.
So you never told your parents
I didn't tell my parents until many years later.
many years later. Okay.
Yeah,
So you suffered with this violence. You suffered with this emotional um, thing of feeling ashamed and feeling the hatred, feeling the anger, the different emotions that would come along with being violated.
right. Because as men, I immediately attributed it to it taking a part of my manhood away.
Right, 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 right.
And so I didn't feel comfortable sharing with other men because I didn't want them to see me as less of a man.
Exactly. You don't want to be perceived as less than. If you
Yes.
told that story, they would ask you certain questions and then start to label you,
Right.
and you don't want to go through that. I understand.
Right.
I believe a lot of people that have been abused, um, they um, they are abused in silence. And that,
Exactly.
mhm,
Yeah, that silence is it's a tactic
mhm,
that abusers use
mhm,
in many facets
right,
of keeping it silent. Even now, I mean, in our communities,
right,
it's all about no snitching
right,
and no don't tell.
right,
But it that actually continues the violation.
right.
It continues all of that, and so it's not until you open your mouth, it's not until you communicate and tell someone that
Exactly.
you can begin that process of getting what you need.
Right. We'll start to begin the healing process.
Exactly.
I've always learned that exposure brings closure. So I also had similar experiences, but I understand and I can empathize with you as far as the anger and feeling that someone that had power um, use that power or use that authority to violate you.
Right.
So wow, that's real interesting. Um, how did you cope with this abuse? So I know we have different coping mechanisms. Um, just by reading that 1 out of 6 males have been sexually abused, and they are abused and they're silent about it. They're not telling their parents. They're not telling um, any type of person in authority. Um, how do you feel about that? How do you cope with it? Because it took many years. You're 5 years old However, there has to be some type of coping mechanism. I understood that people that have been abused sexually either go to drugs or are very perverted, or they have a saying that people that have been sexually abused are likely the same person that will abuse someone else when they get older. So, how do you feel about that? That that coping part of it, just dealing with the perceives thoughts of other people, and also how did you just cope with that during all these years? Did you think you were less than, or did you think that as long as I kept this to myself, the secret is just hitting with me?
Well, at first, I don't think I dealt with it in a productive manner. Um, but a lot of times, what I think we, especially as men, like we're not really encouraged to share our feelings
Right, right.
anyway. You know,
Yeah,
no,
men don't share. They don't
right,
cry.
right.
They
We
don't
don't
do
do that.
this.
You
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
because that's you're seen
yeah.
as weak
You're weak, right?
and all of that. And
Right.
so I try to be, I try to handle it.
So, yeah,
Right.
I got this.
I tried to handle it
Right.
myself, and I tried to keep it inside.
Right.
But just like a boiling pot, after
Right.
a while, everything that you keep inside is coming out. And it's going to come out in ways that you don't even know, but it will come out. And so I pushed a lot of people away. Anyone that I perceived to be
A threat.
yes,
Okay.
I would keep them at arm's distance.
Right.
And relationships, intimacy, uh, became a little challenging because I would become withdrawn after a while.
Right.
And I also thought that it made me less worthy of being in a relationship or married material
Right.
because somehow it took away a part of me being a man.
Right.
And I was, I got to a place where I did share it with my now wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, and she thought I was crazy.
Right.
And she immediately gave me the support that I needed.
Wow. That's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, once you start talking about it, you'll see some of the things that you're creating in your mind that's
Right.
keeping you confined
Right.
to fear.
Right.
But after a while, I started to write as an artist for me.
Right.
Writing, whether it was poetry or lyrics to songs or things like that, things that would help me to sort of work through what I was feeling.
Wow.
And ultimately, that is how I got to my breakthrough.
Wow. Wow. That's very, very encouraging. Do you think that you would respond or react if you seen that person? Because I know you were saying that you really can't visualize the person's face, but if that person came, or if you walked in this door today, do you think that would trigger something, or would that cause a reaction? Because I know you said you emotionally you felt the anger, you felt shame,
Right.
these emotions that you would deal with. Do you think you would respond favorably? Did you have to, in your process, did you understand that, I must forgive this person in order for me to move on? Did any of those types of things, come up?
Okay. Well, that's a really, really, that's a good question.
Okay.
I if I could just backtrack real quick, when you said how did I work through it?
Right.
So forgiveness was a major part of this.
Mm.
So it took me a long time to understand that to forgive someone doesn't mean that um, you like them, you like what happened, or you're saying what happened is fine.
Right.
It doesn't mean that you're no longer angry. It doesn't mean that. It just means that you've given this to God.
Right.
And I had to do that because it will eat you up.
So forgiveness was more about yourself
Yes.
and not a feeling. Because I've always learned that, forgiving is a choice. I've just made a choice today that I'm going to forgive.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And so that was how ultimately working through it. But to your second question
Hmm.
about, what would I do how would I react if I saw the person?
Yeah.
I'd like to say that I would respond in a way that would be productive.
Mhm.
But to be quite honest, I can't promise
I
that.
can't promise it, right?
I would probably,
You
I don't know.
probably.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Okay.
don't
Okay.
know.
Well, I'm the same way. I would know how it would respond as well.
Might be a quick back fist,
Yeah.
into the cross, and then
Yeah.
But to be quite honest, there's a part of me there's a part that wants that person to know what it felt like for that 5-year-old boy
That's where I was
to
trying to get to.
suffer.
Right.
And there's a part I know that in the church in the kingdom we call that flesh.
Right.
But yeah, there's a part of me that wants to, you feel how I felt.
Yeah. Right.
And there's that part that, because it hurt,
Yeah.
not just physically.
Right.
But then, then the spirit takes over,
Right.
and vengeance is mine, to save the Lord. And I believe I would be convicted,
Right.
but I'm not sure which would happen first.
Wow, that's just very interesting that you tell the story that way. What would you tell another young man that might be watching, that may have suffered the same situation or the same violation that you have, and then is watching your show? How would you encourage them? How would you give them some type of hope, or just to let them know that they're not alone, that they're not there by themselves, that they don't have to um, walk this journey by themselves, that there are other people out there that have experienced the same situations, that they can find support.
My first thing would be, to know that it is not your fault. I need to make sure that's very clear.
Right.
I punished myself for a
Mhm.
long time, thinking somehow there was something that I did to cause this, something I could have done to prevent it.
Right.
But at the end of the day, what we have to know as survivors is that it's not our fault.
And that's the key word: survivors.
Yes.
We're survivors. We don't,
Not victims.
not victims. We're not
Right.
taking that label
Mhm.
and victimize ourselves. We're survivors. We are going to expose it for what it is. We're bringing awareness to the situation.
Right.
So there's information out there. So that's great.
So know that it's not your fault.
Exactly.
And then secondly, talk to someone. First, of course, as a believer, if you know where your spiritual place is, talk to God. And then also know that He uses people in our healing journey, and really find someone
Right.
to talk to.
Right.
It's nothing wrong with getting some type of counseling. Um, it's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
And then lastly, I would have to say, the forgiveness is really important.
Right. That's a very, very key point of forgiving your perpetrator.
It doesn't mean you're saying it was okay.
Yeah, or that you forgot. How people say, "Well, I forgive, but I never forget." It's going to be a hard time to forget that situation.
Right. But at least you're not allowing that to hold you back any
Right.
longer.
Right. Right. Wow, that's I find it very courageous of you just to tell your story. Simply because as we go through certain things, and either we can blame someone for the situation, or we can take responsibility and say, well, listen, I'm not going to stay where I'm at. I'm going to make this work out for my good. Because sometimes we go through things not necessarily for ourselves, but we go through them for other people. So now we know what it feels like physically, emotionally, and psychologically. So we have that testimony that we can actually use for that. So If you had to, you know, give one or two words of encouragement to others that are going through this, what would they be?
Oh man, you know, I everybody has the right to feel safe, strong, and free. So anything, if there's something going on right now in your life, someone is taking away that ability for you to feel safe, strong, or free, that most likely is a form of abuse. And I would strongly encourage you to talk to someone and remove yourself as best as possible from that situation. If you're a child and you're seeing this video, please tell an adult.
Exactly.
Please don't be silent. Don't keep it to yourself. Talk to someone. And then, secondly, I would say you have purpose. How I got to this place is that I realized that, you know what, that person could have killed me. It could be that I would not be here to talk about it, but I am.
Right.
I am. I'm still here. So
Exactly.
once I started looking at it from that perspective, that my life didn't end with that situation.
Right.
I have more life to live and to make the most of what I
Right.
have. I began to be free.
Yeah, I see that even in your bio, how you use that tragedy
Hmm.
and you turn it around and you're a song.
Yes.
And it deals with what you've gone through, and it's powerful. It's very powerful that how we can use what has been so tragic to be turned around to something that can encourage someone out there. So we're gonna watch a clip of Carl Brister in his new video. I'm still here. Stay tuned.
When I was young, I went through what no child should ever see. But I'm still here, and this is why I gotta sing. My life was threatened, molestation tried to take me out. Told I would regret it if I ever opened my mouth. For years and years I hid them tears, pillow. Wet from shame, from hurt, from pain, for real though. I asked the Lord to tell me why it had to be this way. Perhaps to help somebody say, I'm still here. I'm still here, I'm still here. I'm still here, I'm still here. I'm still here. I'm still here, I'm still here. I'm still here. I'm still here, I'm still here. I'm still here.
We're back, and I'm here with Carl Brister, and we're talking about male survivors of sexual abuse. And I had a few more questions for Carl, speaking about his journey through this sexual abuse. And we spoke about coming forward and finding someone that they can trust. I mean, being violated, there's trust issues that we deal with.
Right.
Who can we trust? Because in my incident that I've experienced when I was younger, it was people, the person that violated me was a pastor of a church. I felt that if I told my mom said, well, what did you do to, cause this to happen? Or that she wouldn't believe me. So that's why I kept a lot of my frustrations, a lot of my anger to myself, because the one that I trusted in so much was the one that violated me, or he preyed. He preyed on me. So I had to keep that to myself, because who's going to say that, oh, the man of God just touched me, the man of God just, rubbed my body, and say, well, because this person is married, this person has kids, has a large church. What do you do with that information? So I had to keep it to myself, and I had to pray and had to kind of work through all that. And then my identity was in question.
Yeah.
So it was time for me, to get married and stuff like that, I had to disclose that to my fiance before I got married, as far as the things that I experienced, because I didn't want it to come back. But I knew that I had to forgive for me to be whole again, spirit, soul, and body. So, but it's a continual journey, um, because you have certain things that will cause those things, or there are certain triggers that will make you think about those experiences that you once experienced. And then when you have children, that was a question
Yeah.
that I really wanted to talk about.
Right.
You have two young boys.
Yes.
So how do you feel about, protecting them and having them going to school, and because
Yeah.
you've experienced what you experienced, so
Right. Yeah, I'm very, very sensitive as a father.
right,
As a dad, it's like my job is to make sure that they're as protected as I can.
right,
So I am probably I'm probably overprotective when it
Yeah.
comes to that.
Yeah.
I also talk to them,
okay,
and I tell them, no one has the right to touch you here or there. Or,
so you had a conversation with
oh
them.
yes, very
Okay.
much so.
All right. So
Yeah.
they're clear, there's no
Mhm.
gray areas as far as
Yeah, and I'm very, very, very cautious about who I allow to watch them.
right,
Um, it's just a part of my journey
right,
that I pray that never happens to them.
right.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm very, very protective.
I also wanted to provide. I mean, the whole aim of this show is to empower, to encourage, and to enlighten men about issues that they don't normally would talk about to their peers. So here at my home, I believe this is my safe place. So it's a place where men can talk about anything, and this is one issue that was dear to my heart because of the many cases I hear about. Being part of the Big Brothers Big Sister, I have two mentees, two littles that I mentor, and a lot of young men that I come in contact with experience this incident, and they don't want to talk to their parents about it, because of the shame and the unbelief and things of that nature. So they start to act out in other areas. So instead of having repressed, they have a coping mechanism. So they'll start acting out in school
Exactly.
and things of that nature.
Exactly.
So I wanted to at the end of the show, we're providing resources, national hotlines, websites where you can get help, where you can get help spiritually, where you can get help clinically. You can see a therapist, or you can go to groups. There's a what they call a work group where other men that have experienced the same thing would gather and talk about their experiences. So, like I said, exposure brings closure. So, I thank Carl Brister for being my guest, and the courage for him to come here and just tell about his journey, his story. It took a lot of courage, and I hope it helps somebody. And thank you for being here. Thank you for viewing the show. If you like this show, please subscribe to it. And we thank you for joining us. Is there anything else you would like to share?
Yeah, definitely. First, man, thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure.
Thank you for this platform to share something that I think will really, as you say, empower, and not just men,
Right.
but women, boys,
Exactly.
anyone who has experienced this type of assault.
Right.
And I commend you, man.
Oh, man.
Thank you,
Thank
my
you,
brother.
man.
And if anyone also wants to hear more of the music,
Right.
please feel free to visit my website at www.carlbrister.com,
Okay.
and I also share my testimony there as well.
Great, great, great. So after the show, you would see the various websites that you can contact Carl Brister, his music, his projects. It will bless your life. And thank you again for joining us on Conversations with RJ. EJ.